Nia Jackson stood in an Atlanta courtroom, wrists cuffed, facing a smug Officer Wade Carver as the judge slammed the gavel, dismissing trumped-up charges. She'd flashed her FBI badge mid-trial, silencing the room, but the victory felt hollow. Carver's icy glare promised revenge, whispering, "This ain't over." What began as a routine traffic stop had spiraled into a nightmare, exposing a venomous web of racism that would haunt Nia's future. A single moment on a rainy highway had ignited a war she never saw coming, with stakes far deadlier than she imagined. How far would Carver go to destroy her? Before we dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from. And if you stand for justice against corruption, hit like and subscribe, because tomorrow's explosive episode, here's one you can't miss. Nia Jackson gripped the steering wheel of her sleek black sedan, the rain drumming hard against the windshield as she cruised down a drenched stretch of Interstate 85 in Atlanta. It was just past 7 on a muggy April evening in 2025, and she was bone-tired after a grueling FBI briefing on a new trafficking case. Her hazel eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, catching a sudden burst of red and blue lights slicing through the downpour. A police cruiser loomed behind, its siren cutting through the storm's roar like a jagged blade. She frowned, easing her foot off the gas, her mind racing through the last few miles. She hadn't sped, hadn't swerved, hadn't even changed lanes. Maybe the cop needed to pass, she thought, pulling onto the shoulder, tires crunching wet. Gravel? The cruiser stayed glued to her tail, lights pulsing ominously and a knot tightened in her stomach. Nia took a slow breath, steadying herself. She'd been through stops before, knew the drill, but something about this felt off. The rain blurred the world outside, turning the pines lining the highway into shadowy smears as she killed the engine, and waited. A hulking figure emerged from the cruiser, broad shoulders squared against the storm, flashlight beams stabbing through the dark. He approached her window with a swagger that screamed trouble, rain streaking down his uniform. Nia rolled. The glass down, cool droplets spitting against her cheek, and met his gaze. Officer Wade Carver, his name tag read. A white man with a buzz cut and a sneer curling his lip like he'd just bitten something sour. His blue eyes raked over her, cold and predatory, lingering on her pressed blazer and the gold stud earrings glinting in the dim light. "Evening, ma'am," he drawled, voice thick with mockery. "You know why I pulled you over?" Nia kept her tone even, hands visible on the wheel. "No, sir, I don't. Was I speeding?" Carver snorted, leaning closer, his breath fogging. In the damp air. "Swerving all over the damn road, you drunk or just stupid?" The words hit like a slap, laced with a venom that made her skin prickle. She hadn't swerved, not an inch, and the highway had been a ghost town. "I wasn't." "Swerving, officer," she said, firm but calm. "I've been driving straight under the limit." His sneer widened, teeth flashing like a shark's. "Sure you were. License and registration now." Nia nodded, moving deliberately, reaching for the glove box. She pulled out her Georgia driver's license and the car's papers, handing them over with a steady hand. Carver snatched them, squinting at her name, Nia Jackson, then at her face as if trying to match the two. "Nice car," he muttered, tossing the documents onto his clipboard. "Little too nice for you, don't you think?" Her jaw tightened, but she swallowed the retort. She'd heard that line before, the assumption that a black woman couldn't own anything decent without stealing it. "It's mine," she said simply, meeting his stare. He chuckled, low and mean, scribbling something on his pad. "Step out of the vehicle." Nia blinked, rain drumming louder in her ears. "May I ask why, officer?" His hand twitched toward his holster, eyes narrowing. "Suspicion. You're slurring your words, acting cagey. Out now." She wasn't slurring, wasn't cagey, but arguing on a deserted highway with this man felt like poking a rattlesnake. She exhaled, unbuckled, and stepped into the storm, her flats sinking into the muddy shoulder. The rain soaked her blazer instantly, plastering her braids to her neck, but she stood tall, 5 feet 8 inches of quiet defiance. Carver circled her like a vulture, flashlight blinding her as he swept it over her face, then into the car's interior. "Fancy ride like this," he said, voice dripping with disdain. "Bet you're hauling something illegal. Drugs maybe, stolen cash?" Nia's pulse quickened, but she kept her cool. "No, sir. Nothing illegal here. He ignored her, leaning into the open window, his bulk blocking her view. She shifted, peering past him, and saw him grab her leather purse from the passenger seat. "Hey," she snapped, stepping forward. "You need a warrant for that." Carver spun, clutching the bag, his face a mask of glee. "Probable cause, sweetheart, I smell trouble." He didn't smell anything but rain and his own sweat, but Nia bit her tongue, knowing he was fishing. He unzipped the purse, rummaging with deliberate slowness, pulling out her wallet, a pack of gum, a pen. Then his fingers brushed the inner pocket, and he froze. Nia's heart skipped as he extracted a slim leather case, flipping it open. The gold FBI badge gleamed under his flashlight, her name and ID number etched in crisp letters. Special Agent Nia Jackson, Federal Bureau of Investigation. His sneer vanished, replaced by a flicker of shock, then fury. Nia straightened, voice steady. "That's my identification, Officer Carver. I'm an FBI agent. You can verify it with my field office." For a moment, she thought he'd back off, apologize, maybe even stammer an excuse. His eyes locked on the badge, then flicked to her, and she saw the gears turning. She relaxed a fraction, expecting him to hand it back, to retreat from the edge he'd just stumbled over. A federal agent wasn't someone you messed with lightly, not even a small-time cop with an ego. The rain softened, a brief lull, and she allowed herself a shallow breath, thinking the worst was over. Carver's lips twitched, curling into something darker than before, a grin that chilled her to the bone. "FBI, huh?" he said, voice low, almost a growl. He snapped the case shut, pocketing it, and stepped closer, towering over her. "Looks fake to me. Probably bought it off some street hustler to dodge a ticket." Nia's stomach dropped, disbelief crashing over her. "It's real," she said, sharper now. "Call my supervisor, Agent Lena Brooks, Atlanta Field Office. She'll confirm it." He laughed, a harsh bark that echoed off the wet asphalt. "Oh, I don't think so. You're too slick, too uppity. I've seen your type, flashing shiny toys to get out of trouble. Not tonight." Before she could protest, he grabbed her arm, wrenching it behind her back. Cold metal bit into her wrists as he slapped handcuffs on, tighter than necessary, the steel pinching her skin. She gasped, twisting against his grip, but he shoved her toward the cruiser, her shoulders slamming into the door. "You're under arrest," he snarled. "Resisting an officer, impersonating a Fed, maybe drug possession once I search this car, right?" Nia's mind reeled, rain streaking down her face as he yanked her upright. "This is illegal," she said, voice shaking with fury. "You saw my badge. You know who I am." Carver leaned in, his breath hot against her ear, reeking of tobacco. "I don't care who you think you are. Out here I'm the law and you're just another thug in cuffs." He shoved her into the back seat, the door slamming shut with a clang that drowned out the storm. Through the window, she saw him toss her purse into his cruiser, her badge still in his pocket, and climb into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and as the car lurched forward, Nia's brief flicker of relief from showing her badge dissolved into a sinking dread. She'd assumed her credentials would end this, that a cop, even a rotten one, wouldn't dare cross that line. She was wrong. Carver wasn't backing down. He was doubling down, and the glint in his eyes as he glanced back at her promised something far uglier than a simple stop. Her sedan sat abandoned on the shoulder, rain pooling around its tires as the cruiser sped toward the precinct, carrying her into a nightmare she couldn't yet fathom. The cuffs dug deeper with every bump, a physical reminder of the war she'd just stumbled into, one sparked by a badge he refused to respect and a hatred she couldn't escape. The cruiser screeched to a halt outside a squat gray precinct in downtown Atlanta, rain still pounding the roof as Officer Wade Carver yanked Nia Jackson from the back seat. Her wrists ached from the cuffs, her soaked blazer clinging to her skin, but she held her head high, refusing to let him see her flinch. He gripped her arm, dragging her through a rusted side door into a fluorescent-lit hallway, buzzing with static from old radios. A cluster of officers lounged near a coffee machine, their chatter dying as Carver paraded her past them like a trophy. "Caught me a live one," he bellowed, his voice bouncing off the chipped walls. "Think she's some big-shot Fed?" The men snickered, their eyes crawling over Nia, some muttering slurs under their breath, others nodding like they'd seen this show before. She clenched her jaw, counting the faces, 5 in all, each one a potential witness or accomplice. Carver shoved her toward a holding area, the air thick with the stench of sweat and bleach, and unlocked a cell with a clang. The bars were streaked with grime, the concrete floor sticky under her flats as he pushed her inside. "Welcome home," he sneered, slamming the gate shut, the sound rattling her bones. Nia spun to face him, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I need to make a call. It's my right." Carver's laugh was a guttural rasp, his bulk filling the doorway. "Rights? Out here I say who gets what. You sit tight, princess." He turned to leave, her FBI badge still bulging in his pocket, a taunt she couldn't reach. She banged on the bars, the metal cold against her palms. "You can't do this." "Carver, that badge is real and you know it." He paused, glancing back with a smirk that made her skin crawl. "We'll see about that," he said, then strode off, his boots echoing down the hall. Nia sank onto the cell's lone bench, a splintered slab of wood bolted to the wall, her mind racing. She'd been in tight spots before, undercover ops gone sideways, but this was different. This was personal, a cop with a grudge and a system that might just let him win. Hours crawled by, the precinct's hum, a constant drone broken only by distant shouts or the clink of keys. Her phone, confiscated with her purse, was gone, and the cuffs had been swapped for the cell's lock, but she felt no freer. She replayed the stop, his slurs, the way he'd pocketed her badge like it was trash. Could he really bury her like this? She'd trained for years, graduated Howard University with honors, survived Quantico's brutal gauntlet, all to serve justice. Now justice was a joke and she was the punchline. Footsteps approached, softer this time, and a young black officer appeared, his uniform crisp but his eyes nervous. His badge read Jamal Reese, and he glanced over his shoulder before stepping close. "You really FBI?" he whispered, voice barely audible over the precinct's buzz. Nia nodded, leaning forward. "Special Agent Nia Jackson, Atlanta Field Office. He's got my badge. I need a phone." Jamal hesitated, chewing his lip, then slipped a burner from his pocket, sliding it through the bars. "Carver hates feds, especially ones like you. Be quick." Nia's heart leapt as she grabbed the device, her fingers trembling as she dialed Agent Lena Brooks, her supervisor. The line crackled, then connected. "Lena, it's Nia. I'm locked up at Carver's precinct, false arrest. He's got my badge, won't let me call." Lena's voice was sharp, all business. "Where are you? I'll get a team down there now." Nia rattled off the address, relief flooding her as she pictured Lena mobilizing the field office. "Hurry," she said. "He's unhinged." The call ended and she handed the phone back to Jamal, who pocketed it with a nod. "You're good," he muttered, then slipped away, leaving her alone again. She exhaled, leaning against the wall, the rough concrete cool against her back. Help was coming. She'd be out soon, Carver exposed for the thug he was. The thought steadied her, a lifeline in the chaos. Had she underestimated him? Maybe, but not anymore. She closed her eyes, counting the minutes, imagining the look on his face when the FBI stormed in. The cell door's clang snapped her awake. And Carver loomed in the frame, his face a storm cloud. "Who'd you call, huh?" he roared, storming inside, his flashlight swinging like a club. Nia stood, heart pounding. But before she could answer, he spotted the burner's outline in Jamal's retreating shadow. "That little rat," he growled, then turned on her, eyes blazing. "Think you're slick, sneaking calls." He lunged, snatching the phone from the floor where Jamal had dropped it, and smashed it under his boot, plastic splintering across the cell. Nia stepped back, her breath catching as he towered over her, his bulk blocking the light. "You're done?" he spat, then reached into his pocket, pulling out a small plastic baggie filled with white powder. Her stomach lurched as he dangled it in front of her, grinning like a jackal. "Found this in your car," he said, voice dripping with mock surprise. "Guess you're a dealer too." Nia's voice rose, sharp and furious. "That's a lie, and you know it. You didn't search my car. You've been with me the whole time." He chuckled, tossing the baggie onto the bench beside her, close enough to pin on her if he wanted. "Who's going to believe you? Some uppity fed with a fake badge? Or me, a decorated sergeant?" He leaned in, his breath sour with coffee and spite. "This is my house and you're just dirt I'm sweeping out." Nia's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms as she stared at the baggie, its presence a ticking bomb. She'd called. Lena, help was on the way, but Carver wasn't waiting. He was framing her right here, right now, turning a false arrest into a felony that could end her career, her life. How had he moved so fast? She'd underestimated his audacity, his willingness to break every rule to crush her. He stepped back, folding his arms, his grin widening as he watched her process the trap. "Sit tight," he said. "We'll get you processed real nice. Drug bust looks good on my record." He turned, locking the cell behind him, his laughter fading down the hall. Nia stared at the baggie, her mind spinning. Lena would come, but would it be soon enough? The precinct's walls seemed to close in, the air heavier with every breath. She'd thought flashing her badge would stop him, then calling Lena would save her. But Carver was a step ahead, twisting her every move into a noose. Her relief from the call evaporated, replaced by a cold dread. This wasn't just a power trip, it was a vendetta, and he'd barely begun. What kind of man planted evidence with such glee? She sank back onto the bench, the baggie glinting in the corner of her eye, a silent threat that promised worse to come. If you think Carver's gone too far, comment number 1 below. If you believe Nia's fight for justice deserves a voice, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story's next twist will leave you speechless. What will happen when the FBI arrives only to find Nia cornered by Carver's latest lie? The cell door groaned open at dawn, jolting Nia Jackson awake as Officer Jamal Reese shuffled in, his face pale under the precinct's harsh lights. "Court time," he muttered, avoiding her gaze as he uncuffed her wrists, raw from a night of confinement. She rubbed them, the sting a sharp reminder of Carver's cuffs, and stood, her blazer wrinkled but her resolve intact. The baggie of powder still sat on the bench, untouched, a silent accusation she'd refused to acknowledge. Jamal handed her a paper bag with her purse, minus her phone and badge, and led her through the precinct's maze of corridors. Officers smirked as she passed, their whispers a low hum of mockery, but she kept her eyes forward, counting steps to freedom. Outside, a patrol car waited, its engine idling in the grey morning mist. Carver was nowhere in sight, but his presence lingered, like a bad smell. Nia slid into the back seat, the door slamming shut, and Jamal drove her toward the Fulton County Courthouse, a squat brick building downtown with peeling paint and a sagging roof. Her mind churned through the night's chaos, the planted drugs, the smashed phone, Lena's promise of rescue. Where was the FBI? She'd expected a team by now, not this quiet ride to an arraignment. The car lurched to a stop, and Jamal escorted her inside, past a metal detector that beeped lazily as her keys set it off. The courtroom was a cramped box, wooden pews half filled with bored spectators and a few attorneys flipping through files. A single American flag drooped beside the Georgia state flag, both frayed at the edges, and the air smelled of dust and stale coffee. Nia stood at the defendant's table, hands free but shoulders tense, as a bailiff called the room to order. Judge Evelyn Holt, a wiry woman with grey curls and a no-nonsense frown, climbed the bench, her black robe swishing. "Case number 732, State versus Nia Jackson," the bailiff intoned. "Charges of resisting arrest and possession of a controlled substance." Nia's stomach twisted as Officer Wade Carver strode in, his uniform pressed, his smirk, a blade aimed at her heart. He took the witness stand, swearing in with a hand on the Bible, his blue eyes glinting with triumph. The prosecutor, a balding man with a nasal voice, launched into the charges. "Your Honor, Officer Carver pulled over the defendant last night for erratic driving. She resisted, claimed to be an FBI agent, and a search revealed illegal narcotics in her possession." Nia's fists clenched at her sides, her breath shallow as Carver leaned into the microphone. "She was swerving all over 85, he lied, voice smooth as oil, slurring her words, acting hostile. "I asked her to step out, and she shoved me, refused to comply. Found a baggie of what looked like cocaine in her cell later." The room buzzed, spectators shifting, but Nia caught Jamal's flinch from the back row. He knew the truth, had seen Carver plant it, but his lips stayed sealed. Judge Holt's eyes narrowed, pen tapping her desk. "You searched her vehicle." "Officer," Carver nodded, unflinching. Yes, ma'am, after I detained her. Nothing there but the drugs turned up at the station. Nia's pulse hammered as the judge turned to her. Ms. Jackson, you representing yourself? She straightened, voice firm. For now, Your Honor, I request a moment to retrieve something. From my belongings. Holt nodded and Jamal stepped forward, handing Nia the paper bag. She reached inside, her fingers brushing the familiar leather case Jamal must have slipped back in, retrieved from Carver's desk. Her FBI badge, gold and gleaming, felt like a lifeline as she pulled it free. She held it high, the seal catching the light, and the courtroom fell silent, a collective gasp rippling through the pews. I'm Special Agent Nia Jackson, she said loud and clear. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Atlanta Field Office. Officer Carver saw this badge last night and still arrested me without cause. He planted those drugs. Carver's face twisted, a flush creeping up his neck, but he stayed mute. The prosecutor sputtered. Your Honor, we need to verify this identification. Holt leaned forward, peering at the badge, then at Nia. Looks official to me. Officer Carver, you saw this during the stop? He shifted, jaw tight. She flashed something, claimed it was FBI, looked fake, so I brought her in. Nia stepped closer, her voice cutting through his excuse. He pocketed it, refused to call my field office, denied me a phone call. That baggie appeared after he smashed a phone I used to contact my supervisor. The judge's frown deepened, her gaze flicking between them. No call? That's a violation, officer. And this drug evidence, where's the chain of custody? Carver shrugged, feigning calm. Found it in her cell, logged it proper. She's spinning tails to dodge the rap. Holt tapped her pen harder, the rhythm a ticking clock. No sobriety test, no vehicle contraband, and a federal ID you didn't. Verify? This smells thin. The prosecutor jumped in, voice rising. We need time to investigate her claims, Your Honor. Holt shook her head, decisive. Not today. Without clear probable cause or corroborated evidence, I'm dismissing these charges. Ms. Jackson, you're free to go. The gavel slammed, a sharp crack that echoed in Nia's ears, and relief flooded her chest, warm and fleeting. The room stirred, whispers swelling as Carver's smirk vanished, replaced by a scowl. That could melt steel. Nia gathered her purse, badge clutched tight, and walked toward the exit, her legs steady despite the exhaustion clawing at her. She'd won, beaten his lies with the truth, her badge a shield that had finally worked. The courthouse doors swung, open morning sun spilling across the steps, and she inhaled deeply, tasting freedom. She'd call Lena, file a report, maybe even see Carver's badge stripped by sundown. Her heart lifted, a rare smile tugging at her lips as she descended the stairs, the weight of the night slipping away. Then a shadow fell across her path, and she froze. Carver stood at the bottom, alone, his cruiser parked crookedly nearby. He didn't touch her, didn't need to, his presence a wall of menace. His eyes bored into hers, icy and unblinking, and he stepped close, breath hot against her face. I'll bury you, he whispered, voice low and venomous, each word a promise carved in stone. You think this is over? You humiliated me in there, fed, and I don't forget. Nia's smile vanished, her pulse spiking as she held his stare, refusing to flinch. Threatening a federal agent's a crime, Carver, she said, quiet but firm. He chuckled, a sound like gravel grinding underfoot, and leaned closer, his bulk casting her in shadow. Crime's what I say it is. Watch your back, Jackson. Next time, no courtroom saving you. He turned, sauntering to his cruiser, leaving her rooted to the spot. The sun felt colder now, the air heavier, and her brief triumph soured into something bitter. She'd walked free, yes, but Carver's words clung like damp rot, a vow she couldn't shake. Her badge had silenced the court, but it hadn't stopped him, hadn't even slowed him. She glanced at the building behind her, the judges ruling a fleeting shield against a man who didn't play by rules. How deep did his hate run? She pulled her blazer tighter, the fabric still damp from the rain, and started toward her car, parked blocks away after the tow from the interstate. The victory was real, the charges gone, but his threat loomed larger than the dismissal, a dark cloud swelling on the horizon. She'd beaten him once, but Carver wasn't done, and the glint in his eyes promised a fight she hadn't bargained for. Her steps quickened, the courthouse fading behind her, but his whisper followed, a ghost she couldn't outrun. What had she unleashed by showing that badge? Nia Jackson stepped into the Atlanta FBI field office 3 days after her courtroom win, the weight of Officer Wade Carver's whispered threat still coiling in her gut like a live wire. She'd spent the weekend scrubbing the precinct's grime from her skin, filing a report with Agent Lena Brooks, and retrieving her sedan from the impound lot, its tires caked with highway mud. The office buzzed with Monday morning energy, agents tapping at keyboards, phones trilling, the air sharp with coffee and ink. Nia slid into her cubicle, her badge back on her hip, its gold a quiet comfort after Carver's attempt to strip it away. She booted up her computer, ready to dive into her trafficking case, believing the storm had passed. The charges were gone, the judge had seen through Carver's lies, and Lena had promised an internal affairs probe. She exhaled, fingers hovering over the keys, letting herself think she'd won. Then her screen flickered, a news alert popping up, and her breath caught. The headline screamed in bold red, "FBI agent caught in drug bust, freed on technicality." Below it, a grainy photo of her in cuffs outside the precinct, rain-soaked and grim, stared back. Her stomach lurched as she clicked the link, the page loading a video from a local station, WATL News. The anchor, a peroxide blonde with a pinched smile, leaned into the camera. "Shocking allegations tonight as sources claim special agent Nia Jackson, seen here after a drug-related arrest, walked free due to a legal loophole." Was this a miscarriage of justice? The clip cut to the photo, then a doctored image, Nia's face twisted mid-snort over a line of white powder, her badge photoshopped beside it. Nia's chair creaked as she leaned back, her pulse hammering. In her ears, this wasn't real, couldn't be real, but the comments below the article burned with venom. "Corrupt Fed scum," one read. "Probably deals on the side," another spat. "Black privilege strikes again." Her phone buzzed, a text from Lena. "Meet me now." Nia stumbled to Lena's office, a glass-walled box overlooking the bullpen, her legs unsteady. Lena, a wiry woman with salt-and-pepper hair, stood behind her desk, arms crossed, her dark eyes grim. "You see this garbage?" she asked, nodding at her own screen, the same story glaring back. Nia nodded, throat tight. "It's a lie, Lena. Carver planted that baggie, you know it." Lena's jaw tightened, her voice low. "I know, and I've got your back. Filed the IA complaint Friday, but this is a hit job." Nia sank into a chair, the leather squeaking under her weight. "He leaked it," she said, certainty settling like lead in her chest. "He threatened me outside court, said he'd bury me." Lena's fingers drummed the desk, her frown deepening. "He's got a friend at WATL, some hack named Greg Tillman. Used to be a cop, now peddles trash for clicks. We'll trace it, shut it down." Nia nodded, clinging to Lena's confidence, but the damage was spreading. Her email inbox pinged, flooded with hate mail, slurs piling up like filth in a gutter. By noon, the story had gone viral, hashtags like "Ooh Crooked Fed" and "Do Naya the Dealer" trending on X. Her phone lit up with calls from unknown numbers, voicemails, hissing threats. "We know where you work, traitor." She muted it, hands shaking, but the office vibe shifted. Colleagues glanced her way, some with pity, others with doubt, the whispers a knife in her spine. She pushed through the day, briefing a team on the trafficking case, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lena called her back at 4, her tone clipped. "IA's expediting Carver's review. You're clean, Nia, we'll prove it." Nia exhaled, a flicker of hope warming her chest. She left the office at dusk, the sky bruising purple over Atlanta's skyline, and drove home to her midtown apartment, a modest one-bedroom with a view of twinkling lights. She locked the door, poured a glass of water, and sank onto her couch, believing the worst was behind her. The FBI's weight would crush Carver's smear, she told herself, sipping slowly, the cool liquid soothing her raw nerves. She'd survived his cuffs, his cell, his lies in court. This was just noise. Then her TV blared alive, a breaking news. Chyron flashing, protesters demand FBI agent's arrest. She grabbed the remote, volume spiking as footage rolled. A crowd, maybe 50 strong, picketed the field office, signs waving, "Lock her up, and no justice, no peace." A man in a red cap shouted into a megaphone. "Nia Jackson's a disgrace, hiding behind a badge while pushing poison." Nia's glass slipped, shattering on the hardwood, water pooling like blood. Her name, her face twisted into a villain's mask, plastered across every screen in the city. She stood, pacing, her braids swinging as she dialed Lena again. "There, outside the office," she said, voice cracking. "This is insane." Lena's sigh crackled through the line. "Tillman's stirring the pot, but we've got PR on it. Stay low, Nia, we'll fix this." She hung up, the words hollow against the roar in her head. Fix it? How? She'd beaten Carver in court, thought. The FBI's shield would hold, but he'd turned her victory to ash. She grabbed her laptop, tracing the leak's source, her training kicking in. Tillman's byline linked to a dozen cop puff pieces, his ex-account cozy with Carver's precinct. Buddies. She screenshot it all, sent it to Lena, then drove to the precinct herself, fury overriding fear. The lot was quiet, rain tapping the windshield as she spotted Carver near his cruiser, laughing with a patrolman. She stepped out, storming toward him, her flat slapping wet asphalt. "You did this," she snapped, stopping 10 feet away. "Leak that trash to Tillman." Carver turned, his smirk a slow burn, eyes glinting under the streetlight. "Prove it, princess," he said, voice thick with glee. "You're done. Nobody trusts a Fed like you now." Before she could retort, a brick sailed from the shadows, smashing her car's driver-side window with a sickening crunch. Glass sprayed, glittering on the pavement, and Carver laughed, a deep, rolling sound that chilled her blood. "See? Even the streets hate you," he said, sauntering off as she stood frozen, the night swallowing his silhouette. Nia's hands shook as she stared at the wreckage, her brief hope from Lena's assurances crumbling. The courtroom win, the FBI's backing, none of it mattered against this tidal wave of hate. Carver hadn't just threatened her, he'd weaponized the city against her, and that brick was just the start. Her apartment felt miles away, the drive back a blur of headlights and dread. She locked the door, sank to the floor, and stared at the TV, the protest replaying on loop. How had he turned her shield into a target so fast? If you think Carver's smear campaign crosses a line no cop should touch, comment number 1 below. If you're rooting for Nia to fight back against this racist onslaught, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next chapter is going to blow your mind. What happens when Carver's hate strikes closer to home than Nia ever feared? Nia Jackson woke to her phone buzzing on the nightstand, the clock glowing 3:17 in the morning, a red slash against the dark of her midtown apartment. Her head throbbed from a restless night, the TV's protest footage still looping. In her mind, Carver's smirk a ghost she couldn't shake. She grabbed the device, squinting at the screen, and saw her mother's name, Elise Jackson, flashing. A jolt of dread snapped her upright, her braids spilling over her shoulders as she answered. "Mom?" Elise's voice cracked through the line, raw with panic. "Nia, the shop, it's trashed. Someone broke in. You need to come now." Nia's heart lurched, her feet hitting the floor before she could think. "East Atlanta?" She asked, already pulling on jeans, her hands trembling. "Yes, hurry," Elise sobbed, the call cutting off with a sharp beep. Nia snatched her keys and badge, the gold cold against her palm, and bolted out the door, her sedan's engine roaring to life. The drive across Atlanta was a blur, streetlights smearing into streaks as rain tapped the windshield, a grim echo of the night Carver had cuffed her. Her parents' barbershop, Jackson's Cuts, sat on a quiet corner in East Atlanta, a brick storefront with a faded red awning, a lifeline for her family since she was a kid. She'd grown up sweeping clippings, her dad, Malcolm, teaching her to sharpen clippers, her mom chatting up clients with a smile that could melt steel. It was home, more than her apartment ever would be, and now it was under attack. She screeched to a stop, tires skidding on wet pavement, and saw the damage before she even stepped out. The front window was a jagged hole, glass glittering across, the sidewalk like fallen stars, the door hanging off its hinges. "Traitor" was scrawled in red paint across the brick, the letters dripping like blood. Elise stood under the awning, her grey hair wild, her nightgown soaked as she clutched Malcolm's arm. He stared at the wreckage, his broad shoulders slumped, a broom in his hand like he could sweep away the hate. Nia ran to them, her flat splashing through puddles, and pulled them into a hug, their warmth a lifeline against the cold. "What happened?" she asked, voice shaking as she scanned the chaos. Elise wiped her eyes, her breath hitching. "Alarm went off an hour ago. We live 5 blocks away, got here and found this." Malcolm pointed inside, his voice gravelly. "So they smashed everything, chairs, mirrors, even the old radio." Nia stepped through the broken door, glass crunching underfoot, and her chest tightened. The shop was a war zone, clippers scattered, photos of smiling clients torn from the walls, the cash register gutted. She spotted a security camera above the counter, its lens intact, and yanked her phone from her pocket. "There's footage," she said, dialing the security company, her FBI training kicking in. The tech emailed her a link within minutes, and she huddled with her parents under the awning, the screen casting a pale glow. The video rolled, grainy but clear, showing 3 masked figures storming in at 2:45. They swung bats, their movements feral, but one stood taller, his gait a swagger Nia knew too well. Carver. His build, his hunched shoulders, the way he paused to spray that word on the wall, it was him, leading the pack. "That's him," she whispered, fury boiling in her veins. "Carver did this." Malcolm's fists clenched, his knuckles whitening. "That cop from your arrest." Nia nodded, her jaw tight. "He's hitting me where it hurts most." Elise gripped her arm, eyes wide. "Why us, Nia? What did we do?" Nia swallowed, guilt clawing at her. "It's me he wants, Mum. The smear wasn't enough, now he's coming for you." She hugged them again, vowing silently to end this, to bury Carver before he took more. She called Lena, briefing her on the vandalism, sending the footage. "It's him," she said, voice hard. "I'll testify, get him locked up." Lena promised a team by morning, and Nia hung up, her parents' shaken faces fueling her resolve. She'd protect them no matter what. Hours later, as dawn broke, grey and heavy, she drove them home. The shop a crime scene taped off by a sleepy patrol unit. She crashed on their couch, exhaustion pulling her under, believing she'd turned the tide. Carver's face on that tape was proof, a noose tightening around his neck. She'd won a small battle, kept her family close, and the FBI would handle the rest. Then her phone rang again, shrill and insistent, yanking her from a shallow doze. It was Elise, upstairs, her scream piercing the line. "Nia, get up here, now!" Nia bolted up the stairs, her pulse racing, and found her parents in the living room, a woman in a stiff blazer, standing at the door. "Child Protective Services," her badge read, and she held a clipboard, her voice clipped. "We received a tip about neglect. Need to assess your son, Kai." Nia's 16-year-old brother sat on the couch, his lanky frame hunched, eyes wide with confusion. "What tip?" Nia snapped, stepping between them, her badge out. "I'm FBI, this is my family, there's no neglect here." The woman frowned, flipping pages. "Anonymous call, said a minor's in danger, parents unfit after a break-in." Nia's mind flashed to Carver, his smirk, his reach. "It's fake," she said, voice rising. "Check the timing, it's retaliation." She dialed Lena again, her supervisor pulling strings as Nia showed the agent the vandalism report, the footage, her own credentials. After a tense half-hour, the woman backed off, muttering about follow-ups, and left. Nia hugged Kai, his skinny arms trembling, and turned to her parents, relief washing over her. "He tried to take Kai," she said, "but I stopped him." Elise nodded, tears streaking her face, and Malcolm squeezed her shoulder, his silence heavy with pride. Nia sank onto the couch, her victory real, the CPS threat neutralized. She'd shielded them, used her badge to push back, and the footage would nail Carver. She let herself breathe, the morning light filtering through cracked blinds, a fragile peace settling in. Then a neighbor pounded on the door, his voice frantic. "Fire! The shop's on fire!" Nia raced outside, her family behind her, and saw smoke billowing 5 blocks away, black and thick against the sky. She sprinted, lungs burning, and reached the corner as flames licked the barbershop's roof, the awning a torch, the walls collapsing inward. Firefighters shouted, hoses blasting, but the heat drove her back, her eyes stinging with ash and tears. The security camera melted into slag, the footage gone, and Carver's laughter echoed in her mind, a phantom taunting her from the shadows. She'd saved Kai, kept her parents whole, But he'd struck again, harder, burning their livelihood to cinders. Elise sobbed beside her, Malcolm's arm around her, and Nia stood frozen, the blaze searing her triumph to dust. The CPS dodge was a feint, a distraction, and Carver had waited, watching, to deliver this blow. How had he known she'd fight back so fast? The fire roared, a beast swallowing her past, and she knew this was no random hit, it was him, his hate a wildfire she couldn't outrun. Her family clung together, the shop a pyre, and Nia's resolve hardened amidst the wreckage, a vow to end him forming in the ashes. Nia Jackson stood amidst the smouldering ruins of Jackson's Cuts, the barbershop's charred skeleton, a gut punch under Atlanta's grey dawn. Ash coated her flats, her lungs burned with smoke, and her family's shattered faces, Elise and Malcolm clinging to Kai, fueled a rage she could barely contain. The fire had devoured everything. The security footage of Officer Wade Carver's vandalism reduced to melted plastic, her proof gone in a blaze she knew he'd set. She'd called Agent Lena Brooks from the scene, voice hoarse as she described. The flames, the timing too perfect after the CPS scare. "He's escalating," she'd said, and Lena had promised Internal Affairs would dig deeper, sending a team to sift the wreckage. Nia spent the day gathering what she could, a witness from across the street, an old man named Mr. Tate, who'd seen a hulking figure in a hoodie near the shop before the fire. "Moved like a cop," he'd rasped, handing her a blurry phone photo, Carver's silhouette unmistakable against the streetlight. She sent it to Lena, her heart lifting as she typed, "This ties him to it." By noon, IA opened a formal case, Carver's name flagged, and Nia drove home, exhaustion warring with a flicker of triumph. She'd lost the shop, but this evidence could bury him, end his reign of terror. She showered off the soot, her apartment's quiet hum a balm after the chaos, and sank onto her couch, believing she'd turned a corner. The FBI's wheels were turning, her witness solid, and Carver's arrogance would be his noose. She closed her eyes, picturing his smirk wiped clean in a courtroom, her family safe at last. 3 days later, she stood in Lena's office, the glass walls fogged with afternoon humidity, as Lena briefed her. "IA's got the photo interviewing Tate tomorrow. Carver's on desk duty pending review." Nia nodded, her badge heavy on her hip, a shield regaining its shine. "He'll slip up," she said, voice steady. "He can't dodge this." Lena's lips twitched, a rare half-smile. "We've got your back, Nia. Go home, rest. You've earned it." She did, driving through Atlanta's rush-hour snarl, the skyline glinting gold as dusk fell. Her apartment door clicked shut behind her, the lock a small victory, and she kicked off her shoes, tension easing from her shoulders. She'd gathered evidence, pushed IA into action, and Carver was cornered. She poured a glass of water, the coolness grounding her, and let herself believe the worst was behind her, the fight tilting her way at last. Then a fist pounded her door, a thunderclap that jolted her upright, water splashing across the hardwood. She set the glass down, hand drifting to her holstered Glock, and peered through the peephole. Uniforms filled the hall, 6 officers, guns drawn, their faces hard under precinct caps. "Atlanta PD, open up, Nia Jackson," a voice barked, and her stomach plummeted. She cracked the door, badge in hand, voice firm. "I'm FBI, what's this about?" The lead cop, a wiry man with a buzz cut, shoved a warrant in her face. "Ink still fresh. Step aside, we've got a tip, murder weapon in your possession." Nia's mind spun, Carver's icy glare flashing back, his threat outside court now a live wire. "That's impossible," she snapped, but they pushed past, boots thudding as they tore through her space. Drawers yanked open, cushions slashed. Her life dissected in minutes. She stood frozen, badge useless as the wiry cop shouted from her bedroom, "Got it!" He emerged, holding a black pistol, its barrel glinting under her ceiling light, a smug grin splitting his face. "Found this in your closet. Matches a slug from an unsolved case downtown shooting 6 months back." Nia's knees buckled, her breath shallow as she stared at the gun, a stranger in her home. "That's not mine," she said, voice rising. "Someone planted it. Check the warrant. Call my field office." The cop laughed, a dry rasp, and bagged the weapon. his team circling her. "Prince'll tell the story, lady. You're under arrest." She backed up, hands raised, her mind screaming Carver's name. He'd done this, turned her victory to ash again, his reach deeper than she'd feared. The cuffs snapped on, colder than the precincts, and she saw him then, Carver, leaning against a squad car outside her window, his grin a slash of white in the dusk. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched as they dragged her down the stairs, her neighbors peeking from cracked doors, whispers swelling like a tide. The precinct swallowed her again, a different cell this time, its walls scrawled with graffiti, the bench harder under her weight. The wiry cop tossed her in, the door clanging shut, and read her rights, his monotone a mockery. "Murder, tampering, you're done, Fed." She sat, cuffs biting her wrists, and pieced it together. Carver had planted the gun, timed it with Hayes' probe, his desk duty a cover to strike harder. Her phone was gone, confiscated, but she shouted for a call, her voice echoing unanswered. Hours bled into night, the cell's fluorescent buzz a drill in her skull, and she clung to one hope Lena would hear, dig, find the truth. She'd beaten him in court, pushed IA, thought she'd won. But this was his checkmate, a frame so tight it could choke her career, her freedom. Morning broke, pale light seeping through a barred window, and the news hit like a sledgehammer. A guard slid a tablet through the bars, the screen blaring YTL News. FBI agent turns killer, gun linked to cold case found in home. Her face, older photos now, stared back, the anchor's voice a knife. Nia Jackson, once hailed as a hero, now faces murder charges after a shocking discovery. The story spun lies. Her prints on the gun, a lab tech's report rushed overnight claiming a match. Nia's gut twisted, the tech in Carver's pocket, his web strangling her from afar. She banged the bars, demanding a lawyer, her voice hoarse. But the guard walked off, leaving her with the tablet, its lies looping endlessly. Her triumph, the witness, IA's case, all drowned in this flood of deceit. Carver hadn't just burned her family's shop, he'd torched her life, and that grin outside her window promised more. She sank back, the cell colder now, her badge, a memory as the weight of his hate pressed down, a mountain she couldn't shift. How had he rigged this so fast, so deep? If you think Carver's frame-up is a crime too vile to forgive, comment number 1 below. If you're standing with Nia as she battles this racist nightmare, hit that like button and subscribe because her fight's about to get darker. What happens when even the jail walls turn against her? Nia Jackson sat on the frigid bench of her new cell, the graffiti-scarred walls of the Atlanta precinct closing in like a vice, her wrists raw from the cuffs that still bound her. The tablet's glow had faded hours ago, its lies about her as a murderer looping in her mind, Carver's planted gun, a noose tightening with every tick of the clock. The air stank of mildew and despair, the fluorescent light flickering overhead, casting jagged shadows across the concrete. She'd shouted herself hoarse, demanding a lawyer, a call, anything. But the guards ignored her, their silence a wall she couldn't breach. Her badge, her shield, was gone, stripped away with her phone and dignity, leaving her a caged animal in Carver's twisted game. She replayed the arrest, the pistol in her closet, the lab tech's forged prints, his grin. Outside her window, he'd outmaneuvered her, turned IA's probe into a distraction while he buried her deeper. Her only lifeline was Lena, but with no contact. Doubt gnawed at her. Had the FBI even heard? Footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and deliberate, and, Nia tensed, standing as a figure approached. It was a guard, a black woman in her 30s, her uniform crisp, her braids pulled tight under her cap. Her badge read Tasha Coleman, and her brown eyes flicked over Nia with a mix of curiosity and caution. "You're the Fed," she said, voice low, glancing back at the empty corridor. Nia nodded, stepping close to the bars, her voice a rasp. "Special Agent Nia Jackson. I'm being framed. I need a phone." Tasha hesitated, chewing her lip, then pulled a burner from her pocket, sliding it through the gap. "Heard about you, Carver's pet project. Make it quick, I'm risking my neck." Nia's pulse surged, her fingers closing around the device, its weight a spark of hope in the dark. She dialed Lena Brooks, the line crackling as it connected, and whispered urgently when her supervisor answered. "Lena, it's me. They've got me in lockup, planted a gun murder charge. It's Carver. Lena's voice cut through, sharp and steady. Where are you? I've been tearing apart IA. They're stalling. Give me the precinct. Nia rattled off the address, her breath hitching. Hurry. They've got fake prints. Jews is everywhere. Lena swore softly, her tone hardening. I'm on it, digging into the gun's chain. Stay alive in there. The call ended, and Nia handed the phone back, Tasha pocketing it with a nod. You're tougher than you look, the guard said, her lips twitching into a faint smile before she walked off, her boots fading into the precinct's hum. Nia sank back, her chest loosening, Lena's voice a lifeline pulling her from the abyss. She'd made contact. The FBI was moving, and Carver's frame-up would unravel. She pictured the lab tech cracking under pressure. The gun's origins. Exposed, her name cleared. She'd survived his cell once, beaten his lies in court, and now she'd claw her way out again. Her eyes closed, exhaustion tugging at her, but hope flickered, a ember she nursed against the cold. 2 days later, Tasha returned, her face grim as she unlocked the cell at dawn, the sky outside a pale smear through the bars. Bail's posted, she said, uncuffing Nia. Your boss pulled strings, court's reviewing the gun. Nia rubbed her wrists, relief washing over her as she followed Tasha out. The precinct's corridors a blur of grey and green. She signed out, her purse returned minus her Glock, and stepped into the morning light, the air crisp against her skin. Lena waited in an unmarked SUV, her dark eyes scanning Nia as she climbed in. You're a mess, Lena said, handing her a coffee. But we've got traction, gun serial traces to a precinct evidence locker, Carver's prints on the bag. Nia sipped, the warmth steadying her, and grinned, a rare crack in her armor. He's done, Lena. We've got him. They drove to the field office, Lena briefing her on the fly, IA cross-checking the tech's report, her team rallying to bury Carver. Nia showered in the locker room, swapped her wrinkled clothes for a spare blazer, and joined a strategy session, her voice steady as she recounted the arrest. The room buzzed with outrage, agents vowing to nail him, and Nia felt the tide turning. Her freedom a foothold she'd defend with everything she had. She celebrated that night at a safe house, a nondescript condo in Buckhead, her team toasting with cheap beer, laughter cutting through the tension. To Nia, Lena said, raising, Hercan, toughest damn agent I know. Nia smiled, the brew bitter on her tongue, believing Carver was cornered, his frame-up cracking under FBI scrutiny. She'd outlasted his jail, his lies, and now she'd watch him fall. The night stretched, her team crashing on couches, and she stepped onto the balcony, the city's lights a quiet promise of victory. Then Tasha's voice broke the stillness, a whisper from the shadows inside. Nia, we need to talk. Nia turned, frowning as the guard stepped out, her uniform swapped for civvies, her eyes cold. What's wrong? Nia asked, unease prickling, her spine. Tasha's lips curled, a smirk Nia hadn't seen before, and she held up a recorder, its red light blinking. Everything you said on that phone, I taped it for Carver. He's got plans. Nia's heart stopped, her beer slipping. To shatter on the concrete, glass spraying like shrapnel. You're with him, she choked, stepping back. But Tasha nodded, voice venomous. Always was, Fed, you're too trusting. Before Nia could lunge, sirens wailed, close and sharp, and red lights flashed through the condo's windows. The door exploded inward, SWAT pouring in, rifles up, shouting, Down now! Nia dove for the balcony's edge, her team scrambling, but Tasha vanished into the chaos, her betrayal a blade in Nia's back. Bullets cracked the air, glass shattering. As the team returned fire, Lena yelling orders over the din. Nia's mind raced, Tasha's recorder a bomb that had tipped Carver off, his reach snaking into her safe haven. She'd trusted her, leaned on her, and now the trap snapped shut. A slug grazed her arm, blood blooming hot through her sleeve, and she vaulted the railing, dropping 10 feet to the grass below, pain jolting her knees. She rolled, sprinting for the alley, the SWAT team's shouts fading as she ducked behind a dumpster, her breath ragged. Carver's voice crackled over a police radio, snatched from a fallen vest. She's a dead woman running. Nia pressed. Against the metal, blood dripping onto the pavement, her brief celebration a memory torched by betrayal. She'd been bailed out, her team mobilized, victory in her grasp, only for Tasha to flip it all, handing Carver the keys to her ruin. The safe house burned behind her, smoke curling into the night, her allies pinned down as she fled, a fugitive again. How had Tasha played her so clean? She tore off her sleeve, tying the wound, and ran deeper into the shadows, the city swallowing her whole. Carver's words a vow she couldn't escape. Nia Jackson crouched behind the dumpster, her breath fogging in the cool Atlanta night, the sting of her grazed arm a sharp pulse under the makeshift bandage torn from her sleeve. The safe house raid's chaos echoed in the distance, sirens wailing, gunfire popping like firecrackers as Carver's SWAT team tore through her allies. Blood trickled down her elbow, her blazer shredded, but she pushed the pain aside, her mind racing to outrun the trap Tasha had sprung. She'd trusted the guard, leaned on her burner phone, only to have every word fed to Carver, turning her. Brief freedom into a death warrant. The city's underbelly sprawled before her, a maze of alleys and flickering neon, and she knew she couldn't go home, couldn't call Lena without risking another leak. She needed a lifeline, someone off the grid, and her college friend Darius Wells flashed into her thoughts, a wiry tech genius who dropped out of Howard to run a chop shop in West End. She stumbled through the shadows, sticking to back streets, her flat silent on wet pavement, the police radio's static fading behind her. Carver's voice, "She's a dead woman running," looped in her head, a taunt she'd make him choke on. Darius's place was a rusted garage tucked behind a liquor store, its roll-up door tagged with graffiti, the air thick with oil and burnt rubber. She banged on the side entrance, her knuckles raw, and he cracked it open, his dreads swinging, brown eyes widening behind thick glasses. "Nia, what the hell happened?" he asked, pulling her inside, the door slamming shut. The garage hummed with machinery, cars in pieces, a laptop glowing on a workbench. "Carver," she said, collapsing onto a stool, "framed me, raided my team, I'm off grid now." Darius cursed, grabbing a first aid kit and patched her arm, his hands steady as she recounted the gun, the smear, the fire, Tasha's double cross. "You're a ghost now," he said, voice low. "Cops'll hunt you, but I've got your back." Nia nodded, her jaw tight, and pointed at his laptop. "I need to hit him where it hurts. Hack his world." Darius grinned, cracking his knuckles, and they dove in, her FBI cyber training meshing with his street smarts. They breached Carver's precinct email via a back door, his password laughably weak. Blue Line 88, a nod to his supremacist leanings. Nia's fingers flew, pulling files, her blood boiling as she found encrypted messages linking him to a group called Southern Purity, a white supremacist outfit funding his vendetta. Bank transfers, coded threats, a photo of him shaking hands with a hooded figure. It was a goldmine. "This is it," she said, voice trembling with fury. "He's not just a cop, he's their muscle." Darius burned the data to a drive, and Nia crafted a leak, uploading it to a dark web forum, then pinging every major news outlet with an anonymous tip. "Let's see him dodge this," she said, hitting send, the files spreading like wildfire. By morning, the story broke. WATL News flipping from her murderer smear to racist cop tied to hate group. Protests erupted outside the precinct. Crowds swelling in downtown Atlanta, chants of justice for Nia shaking the streets. Darius cracked a beer, handing her one, and they watched the live feed, her face replaced by Carver's, his smug grin now a hunted scowl. "You flipped." "The script," Darius said, clinking cans, and Nia allowed a tight smile, the cold brew grounding her. She'd gone underground, struck back, turned public rage against him. Her arm throbbed, her body ached, but the city's roar felt like victory, a tide she'd unleashed to drown him. She'd lost her family's shop, her freedom, her teams, trust, but this leak was a hammer, smashing his armor. She leaned back, the garage's hum a shield, believing she'd shifted the war, Carver's empire cracking under her blow. Then the garage door rattled, a fist pounding hard, and Nia froze, beer slipping from her hand to crash on the concrete. Darius grabbed a wrench, motioning her to the back, but the door buckled, 3 figures in black hoodies bursting in, bats swinging. Nia ducked a blow, her grazed arm screaming as she rolled behind a car husk, glass shattering around her. Darius swung, cracking a skull, but the tallest figure, Carver's bulk unmistakable, grabbed him, wrenching his arms behind his back. "Got you," Carver growled, voice thick with glee, dragging Darius toward a van outside. Nia lunged, fists flying, but a bat caught her ribs, doubling her over, breath gone. The third thug pinned her, knee on her spine, and Carver tossed a note at her feet. "Your brother's next," scrawled in jagged ink. She thrashed, screaming Darius's name as they hauled him out, the van peeling off into the night, tires screeching. Nia staggered up, ribs pulsing, the note crumpled in, her fist, her victory torched in an instant. The leak had hit, the crowds had risen, but Carver hadn't flinched. He'd struck her heart instead, taking Darius, threatening Kai. She stumbled back inside, the garage a wreck, tools scattered, blood spotting the floor where Darius had fought. Her laptop flickered, the news still blaring her triumph, but it mocked her now. A hollow win against his savagery. She'd thought the leak would break him, force him to retreat. But he'd doubled down, his hate a beast she couldn't cage. How had he found her so fast? She sank to her knees, the note's threat searing her mind, Kai's face flashing, her family's safety a thread he'd snap next. The city chanted her name, but Carver held her soul, Darius's fate a chain pulling her deeper into his war. If you believe Nia's leak was a masterstroke worth celebrating, comment number 1 below. If you're furious, Carver's still won. Step ahead. Hit that like button and subscribe because her battle's about to explode. What will Nia risk when Carver dangles her family in his crosshairs? Nia Jackson staggered through the trashed garage, her ribs throbbing from the bat's blow, the crumpled note in her fist burning like a brand, "Your brother's next." Darius's blood speckled the concrete, his wrench abandoned where Carver's goons had dragged him into the night, and her lungs seized with panic. The leaked files exposing Carver's supremacist ties blared from the laptop, protests roaring on the news, but it was ash in her mouth now, her victory gutted by his latest strike. She'd hit him hard, turned Atlanta against him, yet he'd struck back harder, snatching Darius and aiming for Kai, her 16-year-old brother, the softest piece of her heart. She grabbed a crowbar from the wreckage, her grazed arms screaming. As she pried open a lockbox, pulling Darius's spare keys and a burner phone, her mind raced, piecing together Carver's move. He'd taken Darius as bait, but Kai was the kill shot. She dialed her parents' landline, her breath hitching as it rang, Elise's voice trembling on the 5th chime. "Nia, where are you?" Nia gripped the phone, voice low. "Mom, is Kai there? Lock the doors now." Elise gasped, "He's upstairs, what's wrong?" Before Nia could answer, a crash echoed through the line, glass shattering, and Elise screamed, "Someone's here!" The call cut dead, a silence that stabbed deeper than any blow. Nia bolted from the garage, stealing Darius's beat-up Civic, its engine coughing to life as she floored it toward East Atlanta. The streets blurred, rain spitting against the windshield, her ribs a drumbeat of pain with every turn. She knew Carver's playbook, hit her where it bled most, her family's. Shop was ashes. Now her home was his stage. The 5-block sprint took 8 minutes, traffic a snarl she cursed through, and she screeched to a stop outside her parents' shotgun house, its porch light flickering. The front window gaped open, curtains flapping, and her stomach dropped, the crowbar heavy in her hand as she crept up the steps. The door hung ajar, splintered where a boot had kicked it in, and she slipped inside, the living room a war zone, lamps toppled, photos of Kai's basketball games crushed underfoot. Voices rumbled from the back, low and mean, and she edged down, the hall, her flat silent on the hardwood. The kitchen door creaked open, revealing Carver, his hulking frame dominating the space, a pistol in his meaty fist. Kai sat bound to a chair, duct tape gagging his mouth, his eyes wide with terror, blood trickling from a split lip. Elise and Malcolm stood against the wall, zip ties cutting into their wrists, her mother's face streaked with tears, her father's jaw clenched tight. 2 goons flanked Carver, their hoodies stained with Darius's fight, bats dangling at their sides. A phone propped on the counter streamed live, Carver's voice booming for his supremacist followers. "Watch a Fed beg." Nia's blood roared, her grip tightening on the crowbar. but she froze as Carver swung the gun toward Kai, his grin a slash of white. "Come out, Jackson," he called, eyes glinting. "I know you're here. Smelled your stink from the garage." She stepped into the light, crowbar raised, voice steady despite the quake in her chest. "Let them go, Carver. This is between us." He laughed, a guttural bark, and waved the pistol, the barrel inches from Kai's temple. "Drop that toy or he's paint on the wall." Nia's arm shook, her ribs pulsing, but she lowered the crowbar, letting it clatter to the tile. Her eyes locked on Kai's. "Take me instead," she said, stepping closer. "You want a Fed? I'm right here." Carver's grin widened, his free hand yanking the phone closer, the live feed catching her surrender. "Look at this, boys," he crowed. "Big bad agent, groveling for her trash family." Elise sobbed. Malcolm strained against his ties, but Nia held still, her plea a shield for them. "You've got Darius, you've got me, let them walk," she said, voice cracking, every word a knife she'd turned back on him. Carver tilted his head, savoring the moment, then nodded to a goon. "Cut the kid loose. Let's see her squirm." The thug sliced Kai's ropes, ripping the tape from his mouth, and Kai stumbled to Nia, his skinny frame trembling as she pulled him behind her. "Run," she whispered, shoving him toward the hall, but Carver's gun swung to Elise, his finger twitching. "Not so fast," he snarled. "You all stay or she's first." Nia's heart sank, her plan fraying. Kai frozen beside her when headlights flared through the broken window, engines roaring close. Carver's goons tensed, bats up, as the front door exploded inward, FBI vests swarming the room, Lena Brooks at the lead, her Glock trained on Carver. "Drop it now," she shouted, her voice a whip crack, agents fanning out, rifles glinting. Carver spun, pistol wavering, his live feed tipping over, the screen blacking out as his followers lost their show. Nia dove, tackling Kai to the floor, shielding him as shots rang out, a goon's bat swinging wide, cracking an agent's arm. Lena fired, her slug catching Carver's shoulder, blood blooming red through his shirt, and he staggered, gun clattering to the tile. The second goon lunged, but an agent dropped him with a taser, his body jerking on the floor. Nia scrambled, up, cutting Elise and Malcolm free with a knife from the counter, their arms around her as the team cuffed Carver, his roar of rage muffled by pain. "You're dead, Jackson!" he spat, blood dripping as they dragged him out, the fight over. In seconds, Nia hugged her family, sobs shaking her frame, relief flooding her as Lena clapped her shoulder. "Tracked your sedan's GPS from the impound," Lena said, voice tight. "Got here just in time." Nia nodded, wiping Kai's blood from her hands, the kitchen a battlefield of broken glass and hope. She'd surrendered, begged, kept them alive, and Lena's cavalry had turned the tide. Carver was down, his gun gone, his goons out cold, and she let herself breathe, the nightmare lifting as her family clung close. They piled into an FBI van, the safe house raid a distant echo, and she watched Carver's cruiser peel off, his empire crumbling under her leak and this bust. She'd saved them, her badge a ghost that still held power, and the city's chance felt real again, a lifeline she'd earned. Hours later, safe in a new hideout, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number linking a video. She clicked. It, dread coiling as Carver's face filled the screen, a staged execution in a dark room, a woman in her blazer shot dead, blood pooling, his voice crowing, "Nia Jackson, resisting arrest, dead by my hand." Her breath stopped, the feed live, time-stamped minutes ago, his supremacist followers cheering online. Lena cursed beside her. "He faked it, a decoy. He's claiming you're gone." Nia's triumph shattered, her family safe, but her name. A martyr's cry. Carver twisting her win into a lie that turned Atlanta's rage into mourning. How had he staged this so fast from custody? Nia Jackson sat in the dim safe house, a nondescript apartment on Atlanta's outskirts, her family huddled on a sagging couch as the video of her execution looped on Lena Brooks's laptop. The grainy footage showed Carver, bloodied but grinning, shooting a woman in Nia's blazer, her body slumping in a dark room, his voice crowing triumph for his supremacist followers. Kai's hand trembled in hers, Elise's sobs a soft rhythm, Malcolm's jaw tight with rage while Lena paced, her Glock still warm from the kitchen raid. The timestamp, minutes old, mocked Nia's survival, Carver's lie turning her rescue into a martyr's tale. "He's in custody," Lena said, voice clipped. "Staged this before we grabbed him, a decoy to flip the script." Nia's ribs ached, her grazed arm a dull throb, but her mind sharpened, fury cutting through the haze. He'd taken her family, her friend, her name, and now he'd stolen her life in the public's eyes, twisting her fight into his victory. She stood, badge or not, she'd end this, reclaim what he'd torched. "I'm not dead," she said, voice low, "and I'll prove it." Lena nodded, her dark eyes glinting. "We've got his files from your leak, IA's tearing into him, but this video's a wildfire. You're a ghost now, use it." Nia grabbed a hoodie from the safe-house stash, pulling the hood low, her braids tucked inside, and slipped out with Lena's spare keys, the night swallowing her as she drove a borrowed sedan toward Carver's precinct. The world thought her gone, protests morphing into vigils, candles flickering on Peachtree Street, her face on every screen as a fallen hero. She'd use that shadow, infiltrate his lair, and rip his lies apart. The precinct loomed, a grey fortress under sodium lights, its lot quiet save for a few cruisers, Carver's absence a void she'd exploit. She parked blocks away, her flat silent on damp asphalt, and scoped the back entrance, a rusted door guarded by a lone rookie, his cap low, radio crackling. She'd seen him before. Jamal Reese, the kid who'd slipped her a phone, his loyalty a question mark after Tasha's betrayal. Nia circled wide, ducking behind a dumpster, her ribs protesting as she timed his patrol. He stepped away, lighting a cigarette, and she moved, picking the lock with a hairpin from her pocket, her FBI training a quiet edge. The door creaked open, the hall beyond dim, stinking of bleach and stale coffee, and she slipped inside, a ghost in their house. She knew the layout from her arrests, the evidence room 2 floors down, Carver's office a left turn past the break. Room. Voices drifted, officers grumbling about the protests. But she hugged the walls, her hoodie a shroud, her breath shallow as she descended the stairs. The evidence room door was keypad locked, its code a guess she'd crack, Carver's ego her guide. She punched in 88, his supremacist nod, and the lock clicked, a smirk tugging her lips as she stepped into the cool, shelved space. Files lined the walls, boxes stacked high, and she beelined for Carver's desk records, her fingers rifling through folders marked with his badge number. She found it, a manila envelope thick with printouts, emails tying him to Southern Purity, receipts. For burner phones, a list of payoffs to precinct moles, Tasha's name glaring back. Her leak had scratched the surface. This was the core. Proof he'd orchestrated her ruin from the stop to the fake execution. She stuffed the files into her hoodie, her pulse racing, and grabbed a USB from a nearby shelf, jacking it into the precinct's ancient computer to copy digital backups. The screen flickered, data streaming, when footsteps thudded above, heavy and fast. She yanked the drive, pocketing it, and bolted for the door, her ribs screaming as she hit the stairs, the rookie's voice shouting, "Intruder! Basement!" She'd been sloppy, tripped a silent alarm, and now the hive buzzed, boots pounding toward her. Nia sprinted up, ducking into a janitor's closet as flashlights swept the hall, her breath a knife in her chest. The files pressed against her ribs, the USB a hot coal in her pocket, her lifeline to bury Carver. She waited, sweat beading, until the search shifted, then slipped out, racing for the back door, the rookie's cigarette still smoldering on the ground. She hit the alley, the sedan a shadow 2 blocks off, and ran, her legs burning, freedom so close she could taste it. She'd infiltrated, stolen his secrets, and now she'd broadcast them, reclaim her name from his lie. The precinct faded behind her, her breath ragged but steady, and she reached a payphone on a deserted corner, its glass cracked, the dial tone a lifeline. She called a pirate radio station, a frequency Darius had once hacked for kicks, and fed. The host her story, Nia Jackson alive, exposing Officer Wade Carver's hate. She uploaded the files via a burner app, the USB's data blasting across airwaves, her voice raw as she detailed the emails, the payoffs, the fake death. Atlanta erupted, the broadcast cutting through vigils, protests reigniting with a roar. She's alive. Trending as crowds swarmed the precinct, bricks flying, sirens wailing. Naya ditched the phone, driving to a new hideout, a motel off 85, its neon sign buzzing faintly. She watched the news from a grainy TV, her face back alive, Carver's ties to Southern purity, a headline that drowned his execution stunt. Riots flared, the city's rage a hammer she'd swung, and she grinned, a fierce slash across her face, tasting victory. She'd turned his lie inside out, her badge a ghost that still struck, the files a blade in his gut. Her family was safe, Lena's team circling, and Carver's empire teetered, his precinct a war zone under her truth. She leaned back, the motel's lumpy bed creaking, believing she'd won, her identity hers again, his end near. Then a crack split the night, a sniper's bullet grazing her shoulder, blood blooming hot through her hoodie as she dove to the floor, the TV shattering in a spray of glass. Pain seared her arm, her breath a gasp as she crawled to the window, peering through the blinds. A shadow moved across the lot, rifle glinting, and her phone buzzed, a burner call she answered with, shaking hands. Carver's voice rasped through. "I'll kill you for real this time," his hate a live wire even from custody. Nia's gut twisted, the files, the broadcast, her triumph, all a trigger for his next blow. He'd hired a hitman, tracked her. Despite the cuffs, his reach a hydra she couldn't slay. She pressed her hand to the wound, blood slicking her fingers, and rolled under the bed, the sniper's scope sweeping the room. Her victory, so sharp moments ago, dissolved into dread. The city's roar a distant echo as death stalked her again. How had he pulled this string from a cell? Nia Jackson lay under the motel bed, blood seeping from her grazed shoulder. The sniper's bullet a hot sting as shards of the shattered TV glittered on the carpet. Carver's voice echoed from the burner phone. "I'll kill you for real this time?" A vow that chilled her despite his cuffs, his hitman a shadow pacing the lot outside. Her ribs throbbed, her breath shallow. But she gripped the stolen USB, its files her sword against his empire, the broadcast still rippling through Atlanta's airwaves. She'd reclaimed her name, turned his fake death into her resurrection. And the city's riots roared in her ears, a distant pulse of hope. She rolled out, staying low, and peeked through the blinds, the sniper's rifle glinting under a streetlight, his scope sweeping the room. She needed to move, to end this, not just survive it. Her mind spun, Carver in custody but pulling strings, his supremacist network a hydra she'd only wounded. She crawled to the bathroom, splashing water on her face, the cold jolting her sharp, and tied a towel around her shoulder, the blood slowing to a trickle. The sedan waited outside, keys in her pocket, but the sniper pinned her, a trap she'd break. She dialed Lena Brooks from the burner, whispering as it connected, "Lena, motel off 85, hitman's here, Carver's behind it." Lena's voice crackled, urgent. "Stay put, team's 10 minutes out, we've got his cell tracked." Nia hung up, her pulse steadying. Back up close, but not enough. She'd lure Carver out, finish him herself. His voice on that call a thread she'd pull. She grabbed a lamp cord, ripping it free, and rigged the room's light to flicker, a bait to draw the sniper's eye. She slipped out the back window, glass crunching under her flats, and circled wide, the night thick with humidity, her hoodie soaked with sweat and blood. The sniper shifted, scope trained on the room, and she sprinted to the sedan, ducking as a slug cracked the pavement behind her, chips stinging her calves. She floored it, tires squealing, and aimed for a deserted rail yard she'd scouted once, a graveyard of rust and steel off Old Dixie Road, perfect to trap him. The drive was a blur, her shoulder screaming, but she dialed a precinct line she'd memorized, spoofing the burner to mimic Carver's old burner ID, a trick Darius had taught her. A desk sergeant answered, gruff and tired. "Yeah?" Nia deepened her voice, mimicking Carver's drawl. "It's me, got a tip. Jackson's at the rail yard. Send back up. I'm breaking out." She hung up, banking on his moles to bite. Her ribs a drumbeat as she pulled into the yard, tracks gleaming under moonlight. She parked behind a rusted boxcar, killing the engine, and rigged the USB to a portable speaker from the glove box, her broadcast voice ready to loop. She needed Carver here, his confession live, a noose he'd tie himself. Sirens wailed, closer. Then Lena's 10 minutes, and she saw him, Carver, stepping from a stolen cruiser, his shoulder bandaged from Lena's shot, his bulk a menace even in cuffs he'd slipped. 2 goons flanked him, bats up, his escape a jailbreak she'd baited. He'd bought her ruse, his ego dragging him to her trap, and she hit play, her voice booming. Nia Jackson, alive, exposing Officer Wade Carver's hate. He froze, eyes darting, then roared, "She's here, find her!" Nia stepped out, badge or not, her presence a taunt, and tossed the burner phone at his feet, its recorder live, streaming to a dark web link she'd set. "You're done," she said, voice cutting the night. "Your files, your moles, it's over." Carver's grin twisted, blood staining his teeth, and he lunged, his fist grazing her jaw as she dodged, her ribs flaring. The goons charged, bat swinging, but she ducked, kicking one's knee, his scream sharp as he fell. The second swung, cracking her hip, pain exploding, but she rolled, grabbing a rail spike, its rust biting her palm as she drove it into his thigh, blood spurting as he dropped. Carver circled, his pistol back, snatched from a goon and aimed, his voice a growl on the feed. "I framed you, burned your shop, killed that decoy, you're nothing." Nia grinned, blood on her lips. "Say it louder, the world's listening." He fired, the slug whizzing past her ear, and she dove behind the boxcar. Her shoulder leaking again, the speaker blaring his confession. Headlights flared, Lena's team storming in, vests glinting, rifles up. "Drop it, Carver." He spun, firing wild, slugs pinging steel, but Nia tackled him, her weight slamming him to the gravel, his gun skittering free. She pinned him, knee on his chest, his blood soaking her jeans as agents swarmed, cuffs snapping on his wrists, his screams a feral howl. "I'll gut you, Jackson." Lena pulled Nia off, her grip firm. "We've got him. Live feeds viral. He's cooked." Nia stood, badge or not, its gleam in her eyes as Carver was dragged away, his threats drowned by sirens, the files and confession a death knell for his empire. The yard pulsed with chaos, agents securing the goons, the broadcast echoing off. Rusted cars, Atlanta's riots a roar she'd fueled. She hugged Kai and Darius, freed from a van nearby, their arms trembling around her, the family she'd bled for whole again. Lena handed her a water. "You're a damn legend." And Nia drank, the coolness a balm, her grin fierce as the feed went global, Carver's face a mask of ruin on every screen. She'd lured him, trapped him, his own words her blade and the yai. War felt won, his cuffs a victory she'd carved from hell. She drove away with her family, the yard shrinking in the rear view, her shoulder patched by a medic, believing it was over, his reins shattered, her name a beacon. Then the sedan jolted, a blast rocking the undercarriage, fire blooming as the car flipped, hurling her into darkness, glass slicing her arms, Kai's scream cut short. She hit the ground, ears ringing, flames licking the wreck, her family trapped. Inside as she clawed toward them, blood blinding her. Carver's laugh haunted her, a final blow from jail, a bomb rigged by a loyal lackey, his last card played as her world burned again. Her triumph, so solid moments ago, melted into chaos. The cuffs on him a lie against this carnage, her fate a coin toss in the firelight. Nia Jackson woke to the sterile beep of a heart monitor, her body a map of pain, the hospital room's white walls blurring as her eyes fluttered open. The car bomb's blast replayed in her skull, flames licking the sedan, glass slicing her. Arms Kai's scream cut short as the world flipped into darkness. Her shoulder throbbed, bandaged tight, burns stinging across her chest, but she was alive, a miracle stitched together by medics who'd pulled her from the wreckage. She shifted, wincing, her braids tangled with ash, and saw the IV dripping into her arm, the clock reading 2 days past the explosion. April 7, 2025. The TV flickered on mute, news ticker scrolling. Officer Wade Carver's trial looms, supremacist network exposed, her broadcast from the rail yard a viral spear in his gut. She'd trapped him, his confession live, his cuffs real, and Atlanta's riots had swelled into a reckoning, his empire crumbling under her truth. Her family flashed in her mind, Kai, Elise, Malcolm, Darius, trapped in that fire, and her chest seized, breath hitching as she gripped the bed rail, needing to know. The door creaked, and Agent Lena Brooks stepped in. Her salt and pepper hair mussed, her dark eyes soft with relief. "You're a damn tank, Nia," she said, pulling a chair close. "They're okay, all of them, burns and cuts, but alive down the hall." Nia exhaled, a sob breaking free, tears cutting tracks through the grime on her face. "Carver?" she rasped, voice raw from smoke. Lena's jaw tightened, her hand resting on Nia's. "In lockup, max security, his goons too, trials next. Tawik, your files, that confession, it's airtight, he's done." Nia nodded, sinking back, the pain dulled by a flood of relief. She'd won, survived his stop, his cell, his smear, his fire, his gun, his raid, his sniper, his bomb. And now he'd rot, his hate a footnote to her fight. The news shifted, footage of protests, justice for Nia banners waving, her name a torch lighting the city's rage. She'd clawed from the grave he'd dug, her badge a ghost that still struck, and the war was hers. A victory carved from blood and ash. Lena squeezed her hand. "FBI's got your back, upper ranks saluting you, civil suits in play too." Nia's lips twitched, a faint smile, her family safe, Carver caged, justice sharp as a blade. She'd rest, heal, rebuild, the hospital's hum a lullaby to her battered soul. The door clicked again, softer this time, and Officer Jamal Reese stepped in, his rookie uniform crisp, his brown eyes cold under the cap. Nia tensed, her memory flashing to his phone in the cell, his cigarette at the precinct, a flicker of doubt she'd buried under Tasha's betrayal. "Jamal," she said, voice steady, "what are you doing here?" He nodded to Lena, who stood frowning. "He's been cleared, helped us track Carver's moles, wanted to check on you." Nia relaxed a fraction, her ribs easing, his face a blur of trust she'd lost and regained. "Thanks," she said, "for the phone back then." Jamal smiled, tight and thin, stepping closer, his boots silent on the tile. "You're tough. Jackson took down a monster," he said, his voice low, almost warm, but his eyes glinted. A shard of ice she missed in her haze. He reached into his pocket, pulling a pen, clicking it absently, and Nia's gaze drifted, the monitor's beep steady in her ears. Lena turned to the window, checking her phone, and Jamal leaned in, his breath close. "He trained me well." Before Nia could blink, he flicked the pen's cap, a needle glinting, and plunged it into her IV line, a clear liquid surging through the tube. Her heart jolted, a scream trapped in her throat as her vision swam, the room tilting, Jamal's. Face a mask of calm hate. "Carver's orders," he whispered, stepping back, the pen pocketed as her limbs locked, her breath a gasp she couldn't catch. Lena spun. "What the hell?" But Nia's world darkened, the monitor flatlining, a shrill wail piercing the air as her body slumped, lifeless, her fight snuffed by a rookie she'd trusted. Jamal slipped out, his cap low, the hall empty as nurses rushed in, Lena shouting, "Code Blue!" Defibrillators hummed, shocks jolting Nia's chest, but her eyes stayed shut, her pulse gone, Jamal's betrayal a silent kill no one saw coming. Outside, protests raged, justice for Nia banners waving higher, the city mourning a martyr they didn't know was dead, her death a spark Carver lit from his cell. Lena knelt by the bed, fists clenched, tears streaking her face as medics called time 4:12 p.m. Nia's war won, but her life lost, a twist she'd never dodge. The news ticker shifted. FBI agent Nia Jackson dead. Hospital tragedy. Speculation swirling. Carver's trial a footnote to her end. Her family down the hall, burned but breathing, would wake to a void, her sacrifice a flame they'd carry, unaware Jamal's hand had snuffed it. The city's roar grew, riots flaring anew. Her death a match to Atlanta's tinder, a revolution she'd sparked but wouldn't see. Carver's laugh echoed in her fading mind, his last card played, a mole she'd missed, her trust her doom. The hospital. Stilled, the monitor's wail silenced, and Nia's story closed, her badge a ghost that lit a fire she'd never tend. Nia Jackson's journey in racist cop tries to humiliate black woman, then she shows her FBI badge and the entire court falls silent, reveals profound truths about resilience, betrayal, and the cost of justice. Her relentless fight against Officer Wade Carver's racist vendetta, teaches us that courage can shine even in the darkest corners, where systemic prejudice festers unchecked. Nia's badge, a symbol of her authority, became both her shield and her target, showing how power can provoke backlash when wielded by those the system seeks to silence. Her story underscores the strength found in community, as her family and allies bolstered her against Carver's escalating attacks, yet it also warns of trust's fragility. Jamal's betrayal, a stark reminder that enemies can hide in plain sight. The price of standing up is steep. Nia's victories were fleeting, each triumph met with a fiercer blow, culminating in her death, a sacrifice that ignited a revolution. This tale urges us to confront injustice head-on, to question authority when it turns tyrant, and to recognize that change often demands everything we have. Carver's downfall proves that truth can topple even the most entrenched hate, but Nia's end asks us to weigh what we're willing to lose. Her legacy, a city aflame with her name, challenges us to carry the torch she lit, to fight for equity in a world quick to bury its heroes. What will you do when faced with such odds? Comment below if her sacrifice moves you. Hit like if you stand against racist corruption, and subscribe to join this fight. Share her story to keep justice alive. Thank you for witnessing Nia's battle. May her courage inspire you to challenge the shadows in your own life.